It's Tuesday, April the 24th, 2025. I'm Grantham Taylor Hughes from my show, The Grantham Taylor Hughes Show, with my guest hosts, Zena Suzanne and Stephen Anthony Hall. And I'm sorry, Zena Suzanne Z. I forgot your last name. See, so I messed up the intro, but that's okay. It's funny to do that. And then you editorialize, hey, I wrecked the intro. And of course, his voice goes up when he does these little voices. Yes, he has another voice. What happened to him? Well, apparently he blew out one of his larynx on the left side. Right. So anyway, we're going to talk about dehydration today, right? Which is really the only problem that we have. It's really the only disease in our society because it's hard to keep replenishing the biological entity, which I claim and everything around us is 100% water. I says, my table made out of water? Yes, it's made out of water. If you can bend it really easily if you're strong. And since Xena's a superhero, you can bend that table. That's all right. Bend the table. All right. So dehydration is a big issue in our lives today because we've talked about this 100% water entity, which has to be replenished by three parts of the water, which are humidity, body brine. It's called jade by the Taoist monks. And we have gross water. And gross water, not meaning it's gross, but it's manifest and we can see it. I'll show it in a glass here. I have a glass. This is gross water. It's very gross. Anyway, because philosophers use the word gross for matter discussions. So when we say gross water, it's just the water you drink in a glass of water or in a bottle of water or however you drink it. Go ahead there. I can tell you want to get in there, Zena. Go ahead.
I was wondering, Grantham, do you count the water that's in fruit and vegetables as gross water? Because some fruit and vegetables are really watery, aren't they? Like oranges, cucumbers. Does that water count in?
No, it digests as food. That's why we don't count it. Like if you put any type of lemon in the water or any type of fruit or something, it will digest as food. It doesn't work as the four parts of a lubricant, solvent, a coolant, and vital force. It doesn't work that way anymore. See, so in the vegetables, the liquid will digest with the vegetables as food and turns into blood. It doesn't do those other four principles of the water. So that's important too. Maybe have we gone? I guess we talked a little bit about the four principles: a coolant, lubricant, solvent, and vital force. We probably haven't gone into that on these videos yet in clarity. That would be very important in reference to dehydration. To
Can
become
I,
hydrated, you have to have those four principles. Yeah, go ahead, Steve.
just before you go into the four principles, can I just ratify that most people I've ever spoken to that aren't up on hydration and dehydration and the effects, both plus and minus. People are under the impression that they drink tea, they drink coffee, they drink fruit juice, they drink a smoothie, whatever. And yes, some of these, like watermelon, is basically a lot of water, but there's still a bit of fruit in there. Now, as you say, that would be digested as a food.
Correct.
They're under the impression that they are hydrating to a high degree. Or I have 6 cups of coffee, tea, or whatever a day. And they're not actually, because caffeine in coffee and tea actually draws magnesium, for instance, out of the
Correct.
body,
Right.
plus probably other elements or minerals.
Yes.
So it's important that people understand the difference between gross water, as you call it, and food, which is water with added substances, i.e., a lemon or whatever, makes it food, not it's not particular hydration. So it's important they understand that, the viewers. Thank you.
Yes. And then I coined a word yesterday. The word is flast, FLAST. And flast means fast light because there's no thermodynamics. So when they talk about heat, you should just say flast, FLAST. You like that? It's,
Mm,
it's
Yeah,
yeah,
right.
you don't have we talk about heat, now you can talk about flast instead. It's fast light. See, I didn't like fast light. I didn't want to turn in a portmanteau with a hyphen in it or even connect it because it's just wrong. And so it just came to me, oh, just combine the two together, push it together, and it came up with blast. So, so when you talk about heat and cold, now you can talk about blast and cold. So we got to get that into the consciousness of the people because there's really no heat to anything. It's just flash. It's fast light spinning in your body, and because it goes really fast, it'll create a disturbance in the dust particles, the MDC, and that disturbance will cause it to be. You got to cool down the speed. See, that's all it is. You cool it down the speed, but it doesn't really have anything to do with heat or anything because it's a flickering process and it's a spinning process that's taking place, like the fast light process, because it's spinning so fast. You still need a coolant, lubricant, and a solvent, and it has a vital force in it. It has energy in it. They call it energy in the body and what have you. So anyway, Steve, did you were saying
Yeah.
something? Yeah, go
Let's,
ahead.
let's just get into the heat factor. Now, if we live in a moderate climate, which is the UK, for instance, where in winter it's cold and in summer it can be a lot warmer, it's almost like you go from a cool environment climate to a desert, say. You're going to evaporate liquid water from your body at a faster rate, and
Correct.
therefore you will need to hydrate more because of that factor. So in winter, where we are, you wouldn't need to hydrate quite as much, but in summer you're going to have to hydrate probably more than the average. And when you say average, for me it's 4 litres a day minimum, plus 4 litres plus. So these factors come into it as well, and we know everything's simple at base. Simple is that we need water because we are water. And if you don't give water to water, it's going to dry up. And that's the simplicity of it. But we're going to remember these aspects of hydration and dehydration.
Absolutely, because a drying factor is true because you're thinking about when you have flash and it's going really fast, and then there's a liquidity factor there. There is a factor of it drying up. So we got to be careful with the thermodynamic thing. You can see how it's so easy to get in there and talk about heat because fire supposedly burns, but that's all a conditioning process. When we see things burning, like they have those fires in the forest and what have you, it's not really burning, but the humans experience it as burning, and then they point it out, and then it's a suggestion to everybody. So we have a lot of power of suggestion in our world today, but it's totally incorrect. I mean, if you get into flash and not heat, then you're going to change the concepts. Remember, Zena, we were talking about changing the concept. Automatically, it changes your world, your perception, and that's important because we want to explain and manifest the truth as much as possible, I think. I mean, that's what we're going after is trying to seek the truth and explain the truth and not just let it. We experience the truth, but we don't explain any of it. That's ridiculous because people are wanting some sort of that's what auxiliary country logic is about is understanding. They want to stand under it and be dependent on their comprehension of their language. All right, so if they're saddled with that, I'm willing to try to experience or explain the information as much as possible and as correct as possible, or as we say, moving towards the truth or getting as close as possible because of the fact that we know that the auxiliary country logic is not our native language. We've talked a lot about that on our calls, and we know what the native language is, right? It's what is it? It's and now everybody's run away, run away, run away. It's Monty Python again. All right.
I'd like to ask more about water. So we've established that it's really important to drink water. But what kind? There's so many different
Oh yeah,
kinds.
here we go, the kind business. I
Yeah.
heard that question all the time. Just get it into you. I don't care what kind of water is. I've so they have hundreds of different types of water. I use reverse osmosis, and people immediately go, "Yes, we'll get reverse osmosis. We'll get that." But my opinion is just get it in you. Get the water in you. Because they get so much into nuances that don't really are not relative. It's like the study of the gene. It's a water droplet, and now they have to spend billions of dollars in science to define and categorize and catalog the gene, right? I'm going, no, just stop it, will you people? Stop wasting money and wasting everybody's time. But they're going to do it. They're still doing it as we speak, wasting billions and trillions of dollars on nonsense research around the world. When the world is starving to death, and we got two-thirds of the world starving to death. And what do they have? My biggest pet peeve, what? CERN Switzerland Collider. Yes, let's make noble gases, the 22 noble gases after uranium-96. Now we have Ottoman-118, and those 22 gases last less than a zeptosecond. A zeptosecond, which is a nobillionth of a nanosecond. That's pretty fast, right? It
Yeah.
disappears like this instantly. Can you see my finger? Oh, yes, instantly.
Yeah.
You see how ridiculous that is? And they spend billions of dollars to find this stuff in this big cyclotron, which they have about 2,500 employees at the CERN Switzerland Collider. You can imagine the payroll of that stupid thing. I say that safely. It's stupid. Oh, sorry.
Can I just come back to you mentioned truth, and people say, well, we want to know the truth. What they don't understand or know is that the truth comes from within. So if they get self-realized sort of in that position, they will then be acknowledging their own truth, which is from within. Now,
Right.
the thing about water is that what is the truth about water? Well, it's simple, and we always talk about it in simple terms. The truth about water is we need it, and that is a simple truth, and we
Yes.
need enough of it to sustain our lives and our bodies, the
Right.
functions, everyday functions that we have. So that's the truth. That's a truth, if you like, but is the truth. And obviously, the truth, like I said, people are searching for the truth out there when it's actually comes from within. Um,
Yes. Yeah, it's all what people are thinking about, Steve. And that's important. I always talk about on our calls, we articulate how people are thinking because when we make proper conclusion, that's what you're doing within you, or you're making proper conclusions. That's a self-realization means you're making these conclusions, but nobody's talking about them. See, so when we make a complete conclusive Hegelian dialectical conclusion, which is you got your thesis, antithesis, and synthesis. When we synthesize our language, then people get excited about that because that's the way they think, which is a really wonderful thing when you get right down to it. And you say, well, how do you do that? Well, because I studied with my Tibetan Lama teachers in the Far East, and they taught me how to do that. And there's no reason why you can't explain that because people need the space to communicate. We talk a lot about that on the calls where you just got to, when you're having conversations with people, you want to nurture that conversation, especially with somebody who's not realized in their voice per se, they're not making their confident connection. You sort of want to nurture well, you do want to nurture the conversation as much as possible so that they can make their own connection. They'll feel very confident about that. But it takes some time sometimes to do that. And we that's why we're trying to create time for people by getting them to do the daily yantra work every day to make them financially independent, create their own empire, and then they'll have a lot more time on their hands to make their inner connection. But you see, our society is not set up for knowledge and wisdom. It's set up to go to work and die. See, the international labor camps, but it's not a contrivance. It's just a mistake over a long period of time. In the legal practice, you have excuse me, you have misfeasance, malfeasance, and nonfeasance. And nonfeasance means that there's no reply. Misfeasance is a mistake. Malfeasance means a contrived practice to cause havoc. And there's very little of that because people don't even know how to do that. They would like to do that sometimes, But what happens? They eventually just make a mistake. So our whole history and traditional thought are really just mistakes. And so we can't really pinpoint a culprit because how do you do that when they're just making errors, right? And they're not even conscious of the errors they make. And you both know that I've often said, you want to get rid of the culprit, just go look in the mirror, get rid of that culprit first, and then you're good to go. See, because the only culprit is our own selves, and we need to get out of that and be more commending people instead of condemning people. We want to give out commendation. Steve, we want to give out medals, Steve. Give out medals, gold medals to everybody. Commendation. Steve, for appearing on the show today, you get a big gold medal. And we're giving you a commendation. Appearance on the Grantham Taylor Hughes Show medal. Oh, I like that. Establish that today. A new word and a new award.
So you mentioned there about looking in the mirror, and if a person looks in the mirror, what do they see? They've got to be able to say to themselves, I see who I am, and I'm happy with that. But how many people actually look in the mirror and can say that? So that's one way of starting that journey, in the sense of realizing who you are in this bigger picture of life.
Well,
Um,
yes, and also, you stand in the middle of two mirrors, as we said on the previous video, and you can see eternity. And they say, well, it's just a reflection in the mirror. And I said, well, you can see it. It goes on forever. If you could see them pass a certain distance, it doesn't end. Those two mirrors onto each other. So when you look at the yantra, it's two mirrors looking at each other. So you're creating eternity. Real, that's interesting. That's new today, by the way.
well,
Brand new.
the people
Yes.
talk about we used to being 2D, 3D, 4D, but why can't there be 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10D, dimensional? If you can think in dimensional terms, it's infinite, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
Got to be.
Absolutely. It is infinite, and that's what we address the infinite on this call, albeit we're talking about exoterism, which exoterism is really an infinite manifestation. I mean, Wallace Wattles talked about that he said that the inside was virtually is unlimited, but the outside is virtually unlimited. But I say inside out, esoteric, exoteric is all the same because it's all manifestation. So it really is unlimited in terms of that. But then people say, well, if it's unlimited, then that means it'll go on forever, and we want to continue exploring things, and we can do that without limitations. But what's the problem with the limitations of the human being is what? Well, we need rest. Biology, we can't continue on 24/7 doing things. The body has to get rest. See, so that's a limitation of the outer world is the limitation is we need to sleep occasionally, and that's a limitation. You just can't continue on, and the continuity of doing needs rest. And the irony is that the mind stuff still is going when you're sleeping or dreaming. You have the dreaming as the 10th door in the sentient being is the art of dreaming. You see, so that of itself is extremely important to clarify because nobody's clarifying sentience like we do on the call. We clarify the 10 senses and not the five senses, which is really important because I think people are tired of hearing the five senses and they have the same senses as a cow or a dog or a cat. I mean, I don't think humans really like that in terms of the explanation, but nobody's getting in there and explaining the truth in the matter. See, if I turn my head like this, you don't see my broken nose from I played sports when I was younger. It's just a little bit crooked in the middle. So I've turned my head this way. Anyway, that's the trouble with videos. The trouble with videos by Grantham Taylor Hughes. That's another book that I wrote, The Trouble with Videos. Did you read that book? It's a big bestseller.
No.
Oh, you didn't? Come on, Steve. You got to read my books. I write them really quickly. I do it within a month's period of time. I really churn out the books. Nobody's reading them. Well, that's the nature of that, right? You can lead a horse to water, but you can't get him to drink.
That's
Oh,
right.
Well,
that's
if you
good.
force him down. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
We've got back to water suddenly. That's good.
Oh, that's right. See, I did it. I got back to the water.
Yeah, I wanted to mention there are many people who think they're drinking enough water. They're drinking a couple of glasses a day or whatever. How can people work out whether they are
Okay.
whether they
Yeah.
are drinking
Mhm.
enough or not?
You're supposed to drink your weight in water. Like if you're doing liters, if you weigh you guys measure it in stone, and in America they measure it in pounds. Well, I'll just use the Americanization thing. If you weigh 124 pounds, you should drink 124 ounces of water, a minimum. And then the key demarcation point is that urine should be clear. So that when you have clarity of urine, then you're hydrated. If you have a little color in it, you should drink maybe about a half a liter of water immediately to clear it up. And any damage it does to the liver, because the liver is cooking there, it's cooking there in what is known as flash, right? Hey, it's using flash. It's fast light of the liver, and spinning of the liver will cause it to create gravy, and gravy comes out in your water as color. Like when people cook meat on their stove, and when they turn up the flash, I like that. This is good. What do you mean by flash? Fast light. It used to be heat, folks. There's no heat. It's just fast light. So when you turn up the flash on the oven, and then you start to cook meat, you'll look in the bottom of the pan, you'll see what is known as gravy, right? It's the same thing in your urine. When you see color, it's gravy blasted by the liver into the. But don't be nervous about that because the body corrects itself very quickly. That's why hydration is very important because water gets in there with its vital force and corrects everything as a coolant, lubricant, and solvent. If you have any kind of injury or pain, if there's an injury, then it works as a solvent. It will go to that area, and you can actually program the water to go to an area of pain, and it'll fix it usually immediately, or it'll clear out the area so the body will knit itself together. That's a beautiful thing about the longevity of my Tibetan Lama teachers. They're very old, and they were explaining to me how the body heals itself. It's a healing machine if you allow it to do its work, you see. If we don't do that, then it breaks down. See, all the information we give is about healthy longevity and being wealthy in the process. Because we always talk about making people rich on the calls through the yantra work, which is pretty easy. And to maintain that 9 minutes every day is a discipline very important, whereas you don't have to maintain the 8 hours of work a day. In fact, everybody just quit your job right now. Just quit. Grantham told me to quit, but now I got put in the poor farm, and what happened? Well, Grantham Taylor Hughes, it's his fault. I'm not saying doing that. I'm just kidding. Don't quit your job immediately, but as soon as you create an empire, it's probably good to just let that go. And then people will say, well, who's going to do all the work? Well, we have AI, right? Artificial intelligence, robots. The androids are all running around making everything work really well. I'm not really recommending that right now either because the AI is really poor. Anyway, so yeah, so go ahead.
And we've sussed that AI, it's all in. That's what
Yeah,
it's
all in, right? That's right.
But I
All
want to come
in,
back
right?
to hydration. And yeah, people will say, well, it's a downside. And I've heard lots of people say, oh, I don't want to go to going to the toilet all the time, or the lavatory, or the loo,
Right,
or
that's right.
what you call
That's
it.
right.
But it's part and parcel of that because what you're doing is you're flushing the toxins out of your body. And then the other issues might be, and I have it quite regularly, where I can't hydrate as much as I want to because of circumstance. So, for instance, if I'm going on a long journey where there's going to be no place to be able to go to the loo or the toilet, then it becomes a little bit of a problem. So then what I would do then is I would make up later. So I wouldn't be hydrating for that period, maybe a little bit, but not excessively. And then I'd do it later on. I'd mega hydrate afterwards when I can have the facilities that I need.
Well,
So
there
there's
is.
little things like that that people seem to
Mhm.
be concerned about. But for me, it's you've got to weigh up the pros and cons. And for me, it's just part and parcel of it. But it's a
It's a
necessity.
It's a trade-off too, but there's a fix for that too, by the way, a new fix for that when we're talking about the jade or the body brine, is that you can filter that through your system into the reservoir of the mouth. It's sort of like just like feces and urine can be filtered up to into and utilized and liquefied into the reservoir. I mean, that's a possibility, but it takes some work to do that. In other words, you don't necessarily have to evacuate it, force it. At the same time, the evaporation, you don't really want to evaporate everything. You really want to get it to the reservoir of your mouth and utilize it as the jade or the body brine. Utilize the brine. See, so that's a possibility, like giving a new methodology for instead of urinating evacuation that way, you can bring it up to the filtration of your body because your body is a perfect filtration system, just like the earth is a filtration system too, as well, and distilling the soil because the soil used to be, you know what, it's everybody's species, but distilled through the process of the earth process, circulation of, and not necessarily, it's a circulation, not a spheroidal circulation, but it's a spinning process of distillation. And our bodies in the same way, the cells are spinning and filtering out all the issues to turn it into well, a natural distillation. I don't recommend distillation of water because you're burning off the enzymes. Or not burning, you're plastering the enzymes. Oh, that's good. We're flastering the enzymes out of the water when you distill it. See, it's a new language. Flast is very important. So you don't want to do that because you don't want to make the enzymes dormant or inoperative because enzymes are a crystal. You don't really kill them, but I often say that you kill the enzymes and just throwing that vernacular out there. But in actuality, you're making them inoperative, like making them dormant and not they're not working. The enzymes aren't working any longer.
And I'd just like to bring another point up about hydration that people are under the impression, and I've known people being told by medical doctors that you can drink too much water. And this would put people in fear, if you like, of drinking too much water. But if you think that way, you're never going to hydrate enough because you'll be thinking, am I drinking too much? Well, unless you went and into the ocean, you're not going to drink too much, i.e. drowned. So that's a bit of a fallacy, really, because you couldn't take that much water in.
Well,
Otherwise, you're drowned.
Well, Steve, also, I had a chiropractic friend when he was first born. He realized he was breathing underwater, but then he said he didn't know how to do it afterwards. As a baby, he was underwater breathing. So that
Mhm.
whole deal about drowning in water is just we've forgotten how to breathe like a
Mhm.
fish, right?
Mhm.
And we've forgotten that skill. I don't really know how to do that, but he was saying that this guy was summa cum laude from his college. He was a really brilliant man and a good friend. We traveled to Africa years ago and traveled all around the continent in Africa. Anyway, so he was explaining how he was breathing underwater. But then I said, well, how did you do it? He didn't remember how he did that. So all that are misnomers again in terms of skills and all the traditional ways that people talk about stuff, just like the new information about converting urine to filtration system up in the reservoir of the mouth. You're just filtering it and being able to use it as brine. That's a pretty interesting concept. I mean, it's difficult when you try to do these things right away because when you had habitual behaviors for a long period of time, and then when you suddenly get into it, it takes a little work to actually correct it. But then when you have a methodology and you have an explanation, then there's an enlightenment there. You go, oh, that's a really good idea. I can do that and still hydrate at the proper rate. See, when we get all this stuff together, Steve, we might even look good someday.
Yeah, yeah, get better looking day by day.
That's right. Yeah, well, that's what they were saying about me from the wrist flex show. The lady said, "Whatever you're doing, Grantham, you're looking younger. Whatever you're doing, don't stop doing it." I said, "Well, yeah, there you go. That's good.
Yeah,
You know, I have a proper makeup artist now that fixes it up really good. She puts some clay over my face every
Mhm.
day.
Mhm. So
It's better
I think
clay.
I think we've reached the end of this show.
Oh, I see.
Um, what should we talk about next time?
can I suggest um, power of the mind and the placebo effect?
Okay, that's a good idea. But we were going to talk about propaganda, but we can do that instead. We'll get to it. We'll get to everything, folks. this is not the end of it. We will explain everything to you in a long period of time. So don't fall asleep. Hang in there. And plus, subscribe. You got to subscribe. Please, please, please. I said I wasn't begging anymore, but I am.
Okay. Thank you, viewers, for watching. Thanks, Grantham, and thanks, Steve.
Thank you.
See you next time.